Hello everyone, this is Jonathan Little, and today I wanted to give you a walkthrough of my new interactive poker site, pokercoaching.com. And there are two main facets of this site. Every week we'll be uploading at least two interactive hand quizzes. I'll be going over one of these in just a second with you. And the cool thing about these quizzes is it will actually tell you where I think you are making errors. So for example, if you take all the quizzes and you see that you are consistently lacking on the turn and the river, for example, that will help you know to strive to work on those scenarios. Also, each month we have an open-ended homework question. For example, everyone folds to you on the button. A world-class player who is generally loose and aggressive raises to 2.5 big blinds. The small blind folds. You're in the big blind with a 25 big blind stack. Define your strategy with each part of your range. And that may seem like an easy question, but it's actually a very big question. Should you be having a calling range at all? Should your range only be shove or fold, etc.? And everyone can submit their homework questions, and I will go through them, give my answer, and also go through your answers and tell you how you could improve. So anyway, let's log in. If you need to sign up, you can click the sign up button. And this is the member dashboard. You have this main page here. Then we have quizzes, homework, old homework, group webinars, a calendar, and a support tab. So let's take a look at a quiz. Let's just click on this one. This is early in a live event. Whenever you click on this, it brings up a video with some options underneath it. And you will be able to go through this, listen to what I have to say, and then make your decision. So let's go through one together. I'm going to be doing the talking. Ace-5 offsuit in the big blind. We're playing 250-500 with a 50 ante. Everyone folds around to the cutoff, who bets the turn tightly. Besides that, standard player, but we have noticed that he doesn't really bet the turn unless he has a generally good hand. So he raises cutoff. Should we fold? Should we call? Should we re-raise to 2400? Or should we re-raise to 3400? So here's the scenario. This guy bets the turn tight. Worth knowing. You always want to be thinking about the tendencies of your opponent. He min raises cutoff. Do we want to fold, call, re-raise to 2400, or re-raise to 3400? I think against someone like this, you probably want to call. So let's click call. This is a spot where I'm calling pretty much every time. There are scenarios, though, where I will re-raise. If I re-raise, I'm going to make it on the larger side, probably 3400. This is something that most good players do. They recognize you want to be making it big out of position to decrease your post-flop disadvantage. But you'll see a lot of amateur players make the size they would make in position, which is something like 2400. And that is usually a pretty big leak. You don't care if your opponent folds when you're out of position, especially when you have garbage. I'm not saying you should vary your bet size based on your hand, but this is a scenario where I think your standard 3-bet should be to 3400, especially if you want to have any bluffs in your range. So turning the ace into a bluff is a fine play, and I have no problem with that. So if you said you'd re-raise 3400, I think it's good. You don't want to make it 2400 because your opponent's going to call every time and play reasonably well in position, and that's not really what you want. But most of the time, I'm just going to call in the spot. So as you can see, I gave a little bit of analysis. I think I like call is best. I like, the previous options. I like call the best and re-raise large, second best. The other options are slightly worse. I think folding is just completely out of the question. Also worth mentioning up here, whenever you put in your answer, it gives you a score, 10 points out of 10. Other scores will be rated less, so maybe re-raise to 3400 would be 8 points, maybe re-raise to 2400 would be 4 points, and then folding would be 0, something like that. So anyway, we'll continue moving forward. Ace-5 is, of course, not a great hand, but it's acceptable enough. Flop comes Ace-10-6. We check. There is certainly some merit to mentioning that we could lead in the spot, but I've been shying away from leading recently with any sort of value hand just because it's such a disaster when people fold. And also, if your opponent's drawing dead, or dead or nearly dead, like he is in this spot if he has the worst hand, you really want him to put that one bet in there. So for that reason, I think we want to check in the spot pretty much every time. Leading would have some merit with a hand like 8-7, 9-7, those gut shots. Maybe even a hand like Queen Jack, but I think King Jack and King Queen are probably good enough to check call. You could also check raise those hands. I think that would be a pretty sweet play. Anyway, we're getting off topic. Ace-5 offsuit, we check. He bets 1,200 into the 2,700 pot. Should we fold? Should we call? Should we raise to 2,700? Or should we raise to 3,200? All right, so here we are. I think we should probably call on the spot every time, but let's pretend like you want to raise to 3,200. Let's click this one and see what happens. I think, as you can see, it gives us a score of 2 points, which means I think this is not a good option at all. Then it gives you the best answer of call, which I think is the best answer. So let's go ahead and watch this video. There is legitimately no merit to check raising in this spot. If you check raise, your opponent's going to continue nearly perfectly. He's going to call every time he has the best hand, and he's going to fold every time he has nothing. And that is the exact opposite of what you want. So for that reason, calling is the only play that makes any sense. If you are going to check raise, you want to check raise small, because if you check raise big, that's really going to make your opponent play well. You want to check raise to a size that may keep him in with Jack 10 or something like that. But I think all those plays are vastly inferior to just calling. Turn is a 4. Same strategy on the flop. We're going to check. And now he bets 3,600. And remember, this player bets the turn tightly. Should we fold? Should we call? Should we raise to 7,800? Or should we raise to 10,000? So this is an interesting spot because I mentioned that the player bets the turn tightly, and that should be a somewhat clean giveaway as to the answer of this question. Many players would call in this spot without really thinking twice, but if you know your opponent's only betting the turn with an ace or better, notice we lose to pretty much that entire range. So in this spot, I do think we should fold. So let's click fold, and we get it right. This is a scenario where I would call the vast majority of the player pool, but if we, again, have a read that our opponent does bet the turn tightly, this means that when he bets the turn, he's usually going to have something he thinks is good. So what hands will a player think are good in this spot? Well, most players are going to look at a 10 and think that he needs to check behind to try to get close to showdown. If he has a hand like king, queen, he's probably not going to bet that because that's obviously not good. So if he's betting, it's probably with an ace. And if we think about how our range fares against an ace, we're actually in horrible shape. We have one of the worst aces. So for that reason, I think we have a fold. I certainly wouldn't fault you for calling, but in this exact spot, against a player who really does bet the turn tightly, I think you do need to make the fold. And this actually goes for any time you pick up what you believe to be solid live tells as well, such that you think that this player really improved on the turn, or if you think you just had a good hand on the flop anyway. I mean, you'll see some of the, like, quote-unquote really good live pros, they will fold stuff like top pair on the flop if they get the vibe that their opponent just has it. And you can actually make some of these plays in spots like the World Series of Poker or small stakes live tournaments where you are just very confident your opponent has a good hand. So anyway, this is a spot where on the turn, I think the fold's pretty standard if you think your opponent bets the turn tightly. But most of the time, you should be calling the spot versus the majority of players. All right, so that is a quiz. You can click here to go back to the quizzes, and you can take all of these that you would like. As you can see, there are a bunch of them uploaded. And then the next part of PokerCoaching.com is the homework section. So the current homework question, we're going to be doing a webinar. This is when the next webinar is going to be taking place, is define your routine before you play poker each day. So remember that one of the previous questions was a very tactical question, a very technical question about how to actually play a poker hand. Here we are more so discussing your daily strategy. And then you can see next month's question is going to be a generally solid player in first position raises with 3 big blinds out of his 100 big blind stack. You're in second position. Everyone else at the table is reasonably tight and aggressive, with no one being a blatant maniac. Define your strategy with each part of your range. So we're going back next month to another very technical question. So the old homework is also loaded up. You can edit your answers. So everyone is asked to submit their answer. You can click here, do homework, and then you can type in your answer, and that will send it to me, and I'll be going over those in the webinars. The past webinars, as you can see, we are 3 months into PokerCoaching.com. You can download the MP3 of the past webinars. You can watch them. You can download the slideshows. I provide slideshows for each one. Or you can download the video. So if I was to click download video. All right, so here we click it, and it brings it right up. As you can see, we also, I guess let's... We're going through discussing how to play specific hand ranges using analytical tools to find fun answers. So that is it for PokerCoaching.com. You can go to PokerCoaching.com to sign up. I am very, very happy with this program. I have had many of my students tell me that it is by far the best thing I've ever put out because it's really interactive. I think interacting when you're learning is very important. I mean, I always tell people whenever they're watching my poker training videos and webinars to take notes, and if they're watching the videos, to pause it and try to think about what the right answer is before I give it away. And PokerCoaching.com essentially forces you to do that in a very interactive way. So if you have any desire to improve your poker skills, I strongly suggest you check it out. You can go to PokerCoaching.com and sign up. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching.